Now Chris takes a look at other trending stories.
Any money distributed in this program came well after the election in November of 2010. No money was distributed till after the election.
Governor Quinn is on the defensive as new investigations target how the state spent $55 million on the anti-violence program he created, then shut down. More and more Illinois residents are looking to leave the state. In a recent Gallup poll, 50% of residents say they are unhappy enough to move.
I'm surprised at how large the number is. I could figure, 25, 30% for sure, but if half want to go, okay.
Healthcare enrollment surged this spring, but not for Latinos. A new report says they are avoiding Obamacare in spite of bilingual efforts to encourage participation.
I also tried to sign up, and I found the website very confusing. So I can see someone whose native language wasn't English would also find it confusing.
And say so long to this landmark.
The best hot dog I've ever eaten in my life.
After 14 years of such rave reviews, Hot Doug's will serve its last wiener in October.
Very surprised because it's an institution. Everybody that comes to Chicago that we know, we always tell them to come here.
We'll catch up to that story in a few minutes, but first our panel of guests. Joining me are Fernando Diaz, editorial director for Hoy Chicago, Christine Svensson, principal attorney with Svensson Law Offices, and TV personality D.C. Crenshaw. Welcome, everybody. So Governor Quinn's having a tough week. State's attorney here in Cook County, as well as the feds, announced investigations into his anti-violence program, the Neighborhood Recovery Initiative. Is this a big blow to his campaign, Fernando?
I think it definitely is, because the conversation has now become about this issue. I think it also says a lot about potentially what Bruce Rauner is doing to the Democratic Party. I mean, you have Madigan, who's Speaker of the House, and you have Anita Alvarez, who's another Democrat. And here is their party ally, if you will, in what could be considered a very serious battle for re-election, facing a very serious inquiry into a program that he established and then had to shut down.
So he shut it down, he says 2 years. He's made the rounds on the TV stations, Christine, saying that he did dismantle this program as soon as he was aware of the problems. Is that enough of a defense for him?
Of course not. Why was there no accountability to begin with? Why is it that we have been facing, as Illinois taxpayers, these same exact problems for years and years? He ran on a platform of weeding out corruption, and instead what he did 1 month before his general election took place in November or October 2010 was he elected to go forward with this slush fund to reward all of his cronies.
D.C., the governor's strength has always been his reputation as a reformer, as a champion of social justice, as a consumer advocate. Do these charges sort of get at that very core of who the voters think Pat Quinn is?
I think so. Whenever allegations like this come to the forefront, I think that's going to do some damage to, who people thought he was and who he actually says he is. So I think that he's going to have to do a lot of explaining and, coming from behind this and, making people feel comfortable for what he stands for.
Won't that also help him, Fernando, because people do have this reputation of Pat Quinn as an upstanding guy?
It could absolutely help him. There's a House bill currently, House Bill 3820, which is Fred Crespo as a sponsor, was actually introduced by Madigan in January, is an effort to clean up auditing, to establish oversight and to replicate on a state level the level of oversight that happens with grants at the federal level. And so there is an opportunity here for Quinn to step in and say, because A, no politician is perfect, because none of us are perfect. And second, it's still an investigation. There hasn't been any finding of wrongdoing. I think the key issue here is how it's going to affect his campaign, whether or not he knew and whether or not anything was done inappropriately. Just the specter of the investigation.
DC?
I mean, I agree. Where there's smoke, there's fire. So there probably was some mishandling of the funds. Obviously, there was, $55 million allocated to folks, and we still have a lot of violence in the city. So what happened, what's going on with that money. But I think it's going to really affect his campaign come this upcoming campaign.
Well, Bruce Rauner is already running commercials talking about this, talking about what he calls the culture of Illinois. And in those commercials, he intercuts sound bites of Blagojevich. And Christine, is that a fair commercial? Is that a fair approach?
It is fair. Quinn was Blagojevich's right-hand man for years. He tried to distance himself when Blagojevich went down. He may not have had the best working relationship while they were governor and lieutenant governor, but how can you separate them? He grew up with them, so to speak.
Anybody think that ad is a little over the top for those of you who've seen it?
I think nobody's crossed the line yet.
You know, stories like that may be one reason why some folks are deciding they want to move out of Illinois. Recent Gallup polls said that 50% of those polled here in the state said they would leave. And this was more than any other state. Connecticut and Maryland were right behind. Why do you think that is, DC?
The weather, absolutely the weather.
Actually, they said that was the second reason.
Oh, is that right? Well, for me, that's the number one reason. No, you know, I'm not surprised. I don't know a lot about Illinois outside of Chicago, but I just know that you know we have a heavy crime rate. You know, it's cold as heck here in the wintertime. You know, there's may not be as much opportunity, you know, in other areas that there are here in Chicago. So I'm not surprised, you know, by that poll. Yeah.
And it's not just the polls. People are actually voting with their feet. There was an interesting survey by U-Haul, and we'll put it up here on the screen. And these U-Haul rates kind of tell the story. The top destination from Illinois is Texas. It costs you about $2,700 to rent a truck to Texas. But if you want to move here to Illinois, it only costs about four times less than that. So it's suggesting that people really are leaving. Why do you think that is, Fernando?
I think to some degree, I think it is the weather. I'd also argue when the Gallup poll was done. I think that was done during the winter. Now, as far as voting with their feet, we do, in addition to crime, in addition to corruption in all its many shapes and sizes, we do have a very high taxing culture here. And I think that the optics of the governor's race are allowing people to really rethink, you know, do we need to support the state of things the way that they have been? And I think that there are, you know, even if the numbers don't bear themselves out, this should be, you know, grist for the mill for politicians to understand the impression that they're leaving with people.
Christine, the number one reason people said they're leaving is jobs.
Yes, that would be most likely a causative factor. Other things, though, I think Fernando touched on it. I believe that it's not only the culture of corruption, but the fact that Illinois taxes people to death. The middle class is tired of carrying the burden for state workers, public workers, et cetera. The pension problems have not even begun to have been delved into. We've got a legislature that's, even though there's a supermajority, doing nothing. It's a do-nothing legislature with all the problems on their hands. I do think that Illinoisans are getting sick and tired of the same old people in charge, corruptive tactics, etc.
Well, I think that anywhere you go, you're going to find corruption. So it's probably more elevated here in Chicago, or there's more eyes on Illinois just because of, you know, of our city and our president and other things that have happened in the past. But I agree with the taxes and not giving companies the breaks that they may get in other areas, you know, will definitely lead companies to move out of the area and cause more job problems. So
one reason perhaps to stay in Illinois is health care. There is a surge of enrollment here in Illinois into the Affordable Care Act this spring, right before the deadline. Many more people than Illinois officials thought were going to sign up. Is this encouraging?
Well, I found the numbers disappointing, frankly. Considering that there are 330 million people in this country and only something like 8 million signed up, and there are many more uninsured than that. What is wrong with this picture? Well, we do know what's wrong with Obamacare, and we could go into that subject, but it really isn't working. Yes, it's the initial enrollment period that just closed. But I find it more troubling about the number of people that did not sign up for Obamacare.
Well, among those who didn't sign up, Fernando, the Latino population here in Illinois seems to be avoiding it. Fewer than 6% of those eligible signed up. Why do you suppose that is?
I think part of the blame, part of the reason has to be on the messaging and on the establishment of the website and the infrastructure. It's well documented that the Spanish language components lagged very far behind the English language components, and we all know how that happened. I think also the fact is, unfortunately, the culture of uninsured. And I think that few people understand how financially debilitating healthcare can be until you're in that situation. Medical bills are one of the top leading causes of bankruptcy in this country across the demographic board. And so I think that, to Christine's point, this initial period was terrible. It's very disappointing. I think the only silver lining is that some more people have insurance. Enough? Absolutely not. I think what's going to end up happening is as people get sick, as people need medical care and attention, as they get fined for not having signed up, those numbers will continue to grow. But I
even
agree.
among the Latino
even among the
population.
Latinos.
DC?
You know, I'm always amazed how people, shoot down Obamacare. The guy's trying to get people to get insured. And, I'm amazed how people don't want folks to get insured, that, they would rather people not have insurance versus the process not being 100%, right or correct or, workable. I mean, we have 7 million people that are insured now. That's a good thing. Sure, more people can be insured, and later down the road we can fix these things that aren't working with Obamacare. But I think the reason why Latinos did not sign up is because it didn't resonate with them. There has to be, the administration has to take on some self-claim for not being able to resonate with the Latino community and getting them to sign up more. So.
One encouraging note, Christine, perhaps, is that the insurance companies testified this week, including Blue Cross Blue Shield, that 80 to 90% of those who signed up are paying their premium.
That's wonderful. However, so I'd like to comment on what you had said. Obamacare is forced insurance. I don't think the government should be in the business of forcing anyone to do anything. There are people that go to emergency rooms and are on their deathbed and you say, sign up for this insurance, and they won't do it. You have a right to decide what you want to do. I'm all for helping people who need medical care, safety nets, etc. But everyone needs to have skin in the game and come together and come to a viable solution without forcing something on someone.
I agree, but you have to start somewhere. Yeah. And so, if you don't force people to get health care, and I agree you shouldn't force them, but I can imagine people would not sign up for it just because they wouldn't want to pay for it. So
one thing that isn't terribly healthy, we must admit, one of Chicago's favorite foods, hot dogs. And Hot Dogs, a famous dog emporium, has announced it's leaving. A huge outpouring in social media. Twitter went crazy. Why did it touch such a nerve? Any ideas?
I mean, I've lived in Chicago 10 years, and the 7 times that I have driven by Hot Dogs to get a hot dog, there's a line all the way around the block. To me, this is a fascinating and wonderful story, and in a state where we have such public corruption, so many issues of about the money. To me, this is a story that says it's not always about the money. Doug
Just a few seconds left. Any last thoughts?
Well, folks love hot dogs. Hot dogs have the best hot dogs. So.
And it's also the success of the mom and pop shop, which we love.
And it's unique.
And for those fans, they have to relish for the next few months until Hot Dogs closes its doors. Thanks very much to our guests, Fernando Diaz, Christine Svensson, and DC Crenshaw.